Okay, so we have this UV done, and looks actually quite promising for the future work. And now I will turn this off, so exit editing mode, and add a Turbosmooth to make it a little bit smoother, nicer. And I want to paint something on it. Now, open up Material Editor, create a new material, drag and drop it. I will rename it to Mushroom. And this is a very simple material because I would just use this material as a placeholder because I want to create a couple of paintings on this mushroom. But the trick is instead of using Adobe Photoshop, I will paint directly within 3dsmax by using Tools and Viewport Canvas. Now, opening up Viewport Canvas, and at the moment when you're hitting on the paintbrush or any kind of brush, it will switch and tell you, okay, what you want to paint. And we already know a couple variations of these maps, but basically I will use to the diffuse color for the painting the diffuse color inside the diffuse color channel. Okay, so this is just one bitmap that I will paint, and 1K bitmap is fine. The base color will be something else, maybe it is brownish. Yep, okay, why not, to create a nice uh, fundamental color. And the new texture will be saved probably in the MS3D UV 3D content in as a JPEG. Okay, just let me quickly tell you this mushroom diffuse. Okay, mushroom diffuse. So it's a good idea to, if you have specific textures, that to name them accordingly to the channel that you paint on. Okay, I will save it now. 100% the best quality. Okay, and okay. Now the map is showing up in the viewport, and as you see, we have a quite interesting adjustment panel here. So the layers, I don't care about the layers now, so I will use a single layer. And as you see, the benefit of using this is you actually can paint in the 3D viewport. Now, don't forget, we have seams. So if you're going, for example, in the unwrap UV area, and you are actually, you can open up the editor, you may see that you have all the connections and all the edges, but you can easily paint across these edges. So like here. Okay, right, so that's a good option to use and a good reason to use Viewport Canvas, that you can easily paint through the seams without any constraint of thinking this through. So I will just close it up, leave it, going back to the Turbosmooth, turning off the wireframe, and so this is what we have in the viewport. Now, of course, you can change the size of the brush, and of course, you can change the color. Now, first of all, when you change the color, hit on a color, and you can switch to anything. Like I will switch to red, and we'll paint this capped red, but it takes ages to paint. Now, if we want to make it faster, of course, you can change the size of the brush by adjusting the radius. Now I can paint a little bit faster. Or I can go to the fill and hit on fill, and now everything is red. That's a separated mesh. So because this mushroom is built up from two parts, so we have a top part and a bottom part. Now this fill will respectively just fill the elements that's selected. So if you want to keep it red, that's fine, or you can actually just for the shaft quickly create, oh, it's yellowish. Okay, So I will keep it some kind of a yellowish color. Alright, now we want to paint this area with a kind of a brown color. Now what to do, I will switch back to the paint, and I want to pick an alternative color of this red. So what to do, if you have a color selector, you can always use the pick to select a color, but it's quite time consuming. So what you can do, if you're holding down control and clicking on any color, it will pick up the color. That's a good feature. So I will pick on the red one and open up the color selector and make it a little bit darker, and start painting. Now as you see, the painting is always it's screen relative. So if you're zooming out, you can paint large areas with a stroke. If you're zooming in, you can paint a smaller area. Opacity is 100, but hardness is 0. So if we are increasing on hardness, uh, the painting will be much more harsh, and in some cases it is much more accurate as well. So I will just paint this bottom area, and zooming in, and of course there's some overlap here and there, and right. And to make this quite smooth, I will use the blur brush, and the blur brush really does not require that hardness, so I will just change this, make it stronger. Now the problem is that across the edge there's some kind of a blur issue, and we need to solve it. But how to solve it? So I'm using the blur brush normally, but it still creates this effect around the edge. So what to do? If you see something like this, it happens because we have clusters, we have UV clusters. Now here's the 2D view in this window, so you can turn on 2D view, and where did this happen? At this area here. So not particular this one, but probably this one. So if you have an issue around the edges, what you can do is you can go in here, pick the color, or pick the color from here, and start manually painting. Okay, manually painting it. I'm using a mouse now, so just quickly starting to work on this. Okay, the issue is targeted here, so we have this one, and probably this one as well. So just let me check it. Oh yeah, now it's updating. So check it, painting it, painting it. Right? So as you see, this 2D view is really good for troubleshooting, or if you want to create patterns, or for example you want to repair it here. Now you can pick the colors. Okay, so if you're not satisfied with this one, and this is one of the reasons why we have to keep a distance from the clusters, because otherwise it's really hard to make this painting quite accurate. Yeah, we have the same situation here. We can actually use the blur brush, or use the paintbrush, pick a mid-range color, and then paint over. Usually it gives a little bit softer result if you don't have that too strong opacity. So I will reduce the opacity, and this way just moving and painting all around. Oh, I was a bit aggressive, but okay. Alright, now this is the basic mushroom that we have, and I want to create a smaller pattern at the cap. Now to make our life a little bit easier, we want to quickly resize the brush and change the strength. To quickly do that, you can use Control and Shift, And when you're holding down Control and Shift, you can resize the brush on the fly. If you're holding down Shift and Alt, you can change the opacity of the brush. Okay, so I will just change it a little bit. I need a different color, so here we go. I will, oh no, that's probably, it's white. Okay, this is screen relative, so I will just paint in a couple dots here and there, zooming in or changing the size. Okay, zooming out, big one, smaller one. Okay. A couple satellite points. Okay, okay. No, this is fine. What to do up next? We can also use layers. So, layers dialog. Now everything is on the same layer. I will just add a new. And this new layer will be a little bit different because the pattern we will use. So instead of using a color, I will use a simple clean color combined with mask. We have a couple preset masks, but of course you can load your own here. So browse custom maps directory, change the size, and it's not the best if it's that too bright white, so I will switch to yeah, something like this one. Okay, so this is a separated layer. I will change it, and opacity, maybe that's too harsh, so we'll just add a couple things here and there. That's pretty nice. You can actually move this one. I mean, you can move the layer, so you can hold down Ctrl and Shift, and that way you can move. Now, because here is our seam, it's not working perfectly, so here you have to take care, but there's a chance to move. So these tools are working with the layers, so you can scale them. I can also rotate them around, and it is also working for moving. So Control Alt and Shift is for moving these layers. But don't forget, you have to check the seams. If something is not working at the seam, you can switch to an eraser. Now we have eraser used with mask, so I will turn this off. Sadly, this is quite hard to click on. So I removed this, switch back to brush, switch back to mask, change it in over painting. The seam gives you the best result at the seams. Okay, you can use the same trick anywhere. It's usually better if you start from the most outer areas and painting more and more details later on. If you are concerned about overpainting or anything similar like that, you can actually use these layers as a benefit. And if you're pressing right click, you can flatten them all. You can add layer mask, and all the classic flipping, renaming, and merging functions are here. It's better if you work them while you are in progress of painting, and when you're done with the progression, it's better if you just flatten them out and save it. And this painting method is not super duper accurate. You have you don't have as much options as in Modbox, for example, but there's a plenty. Okay, now another thing. Just let me show it quickly. So here we have the shaft, and we can keep this layer, but here we can switch to the fill tool. Now, fill tool can use different options. For example, no, I don't want to change the color. I want to use this brush image. and pick something like this brownish. And as you see, I can paint with this one, but I can also use a mask. Now here will be a little bit different stuff. Opacity is way too low, so I'll switch it back. Alright, this is what I wanted to show. So if you have an image loaded up as a brush image and you're using it with the fill, you can actually fill up the area, the cluster actually, that you're clicking on. We paint behavior, and in paint behavior we have a fill tool, brush image, so we can use a tile or we can use a 3D wrap. Now 3D wrap will be a little bit different because it will wrap the entire image onto the area, so it gives a different scale. Tile is a little bit more dense, so it will switch the brush to make more tiny details. Another thing that could be really useful, you can turn on actually mirroring. So if you start painting, I don't want to use the brush image, but I want to use the mask, and the color will be a somewhat darker. Yep, why not? Oh, it's not enough. It's not that visible, so I'll switch it to a darker one. Make a smaller size. Hardness is okay. Sometimes the colors that you pick are not exactly matching. I'm not really, I don't really know the reason why we have this mismatch, but when you save the map and the map is reloaded back to 3dsmax, the colors that you see here or set here will be applied entirely on the model. So I like to use this method to just explore texturing possibilities or create quick textures. Right, so mirroring, back to the topic. So we have mirror X and start painting here. Oh no, I had to cap. Right, okay, so now I've found the axis. Here is, so we can paint mirror to the X, or actually mirror to Z. That's mirror to Z. It could be something different, but because the mesh actually is not symmetrical, I guess only the x-axis will work, or the epsilon, the y-axis. Yeah, this is the x one, so here we have x and we have y as well, but z is not working because there's an offset between the top and the bottom. Okay, so if you want to use mirror function, it is there. This follow stroke and random option becomes handy when you drag out your stroke and you want to create a random one. Then you can have a little bit of a more random pattern option, so you can recognize the pattern that easily. That helps a lot. If you have large areas to texture, large areas to paint, then you have a randomize function, and you can randomize every setting. Basically, you can randomize color, opacity, hardness, spacing, scatter, brush radius. So that's, for example, brush radius here. I'll set it to 2 to 3, and I will create a stroke. And now I have small, a large one. So it's a little bit different, but there's some kind of an uneven pattern. Now these randomized functions will work better if you have a pen. Okay, so if you're using a 3D mouse or anything like that, it's just not that accurate. So if you want to get most of it, you have to use the pen and the tablet pressure to change. Now, as you see, tablet pressure affects the brush radius and affects opacity. Now, if you add scatter, that gives a nice effect. When you're pushing more, the scatter will be much more intense. And usually with the brush radius and scatter radius, and opacity as well. It will give you the effect you're looking for. All right. Now, so once we are done, we have a couple functions that you already know from Photoshop. So the dodge effect, that's actually working on the layer now. So the red one is not affected. If I want to affect the red one, I have to go back and use it here, and right now brush image setting, no. The random mode is turned on. I will turn it off and keep it as it is. Brush radius is limited, so okay. So this is a good function to use a highlight or paint a highlight, or there is the burn tool to add more dark, so you can darken up an area. And because we have layers now, the top layer is visible, so layer hierarchy, layer order is also important. Here it's not really a big, because this one is background, there's not much of a point to switch order. Okay, now that's for the basics of painting in 3D within 3dsmax by using the Viewport Canvas mode. Okay, I will just merge down, and if you want, you can save a PSD or save bitmap flattened. So why not? Okay, just testing it. So a JPEG is fine. Right, send it, closing it up. Okay, open up material editor, and we have a material, and for that material, diffuse channel is using my mushroom diffuse JPEG. So I can open it up, and this is the image, as you see. So this image I've painted for the mushroom. So thank you. Goodbye.